Welcome to Love and Money Secrets TV. And today we are going to talk about how do we signal our stem cells to turn off that have previously been dormant. So I'm going to use the basis of this talk is a paper that I saw. And let's see. Ooh, almost forgot to start the recording button. So let's get started again. Music to my ears. We are live. All right, my friends and gems. So today we're going to talk about how to signal your stem cells to turn on. So without further ado, let me share with you my screen. I'm going to share with you a research paper that I came across here. And this is from the National Library of Medicine. And it's called GHK peptide as a natural modulator of multiple cellular pathways in skin regeneration. Now, I'm going to take a little quick pause button here because a lot of us think of, when we think about skin, we oftentimes just think about the outer layer of our skin on our face and our bodies. But skin really includes also the interior skin of the body as well. And each one of our organs also has skin. It has tissue that is what composes and comprises that particular organ. So let's see, I'm going to go ahead and not just read this information, but I'm going to actually put it into layman terms so that you can understand without having a biology pre-med degree or advanced medical knowledge. You'll still be able to understand this information. So this abstract here for this particular paper that was published in 2015, not very long ago, July 7th, it says here that GHK is present in human plasma, saliva, and urine. So basically inside our cell walls, in the saliva, the spit that you have in your mouth, and urine, which is pee, but declines with age, it discloses here. And it is proposed that GHK functions as complex with copper 2+, which accelerates wound healing and skin repair. So this GHK stimulates both the synthesis and breakdown of collagen. So the synthesis is the refining and taking out of the things that it needs as opposed to what it doesn't need, and breaking it down, digesting it, if you will, of collagen and glycosaminoglycans, and modulates the activity of both metalloproteinases, metallo infers that it's of metal origin, and their inhibitors. It stimulates collagen, which is basically one of the building blocks. It's like the primary, the most abundant protein that we find in the entire human body. And it talks about dermatan sulfate, chondroitin sulfate. Chondroitin, as many of you are probably already aware, chondroitin has to do with the building of cartilages and the insulation of in between your bones. And the small proteoglycan decorin. It also restores replicative vitality to fibroblasts after radiation therapy. So the molecule attracts immune and endothelial has to do with interior skin cells, to the site of injury. So it's letting you know that this molecule is automatically attracting immune and restorative skin tissue to whatever the site of injury, wherever you have damage in the body. It accelerates wound healing of the skin, the hair follicles, and gastrointestinal tract, basically your digestive system, your guts, bony tissue, and foot pads of dogs. It also induces systemic wound healing in rats. Pause button. So in laboratory tests where they actually used GHKCU, they used copper peptide, they saw that entire systems within a rat was actually healed in a rat's body. So in rats, in mice, and in pigs. It says in cosmetic products, it has been found to tighten loose skin and improve elasticity, skin density, and firmness, as well as reduce fine lines and wrinkles, reproducing, or actually it doesn't say reproducing, it says to reduce photo damage, which is sunlight damage, and hyperpigmentation. Hyperpigmentation can be anything from moles to freckles to age spots and more, and increase it says here keratinocyte proliferation. Okay, GHK has been proposed as a therapeutic agent for skin inflammation, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, also known as COPD, and metastatic colon cancer. It is capable of up and down regulating at least 4,000 genes, essentially resetting your DNA to a healthier state. The present review revisits GHK's role in skin regeneration in light of recent discoveries. Okay, I'm going to just check something real quick here. All righty. So moving on. Introduction to this particular paper. It says GHK is a tripeptide with the amino acid sequence. It's glycol, histidyl, lysine. It naturally occurs in human plasma, saliva, and urine. So it's basically telling you that we're finding it within the human plasma. It could be blood plasma, cellular plasma, saliva, your spit, and urine pee. In plasma, the level of GHK is about 200 nanograms per milliliter, 200. And it says that at age 20, that's about what you have is 200 nanograms. But it declines to 80 by the time you're 60 years old. So you can see that's a significant change from 200 down to 80. It's about 9 times less. This decline in GHK level coincides with the noticeable decrease in regenerative capacity of an organism. So it's just telling you that as your GHK-Cu levels drop and they start to go down from age 20 or 30 all the way, till you're in your 60s and above, that this is basically, you notice that there's a decrease in the body's capacity. It's talking of an organism here. So it's talking about your body's regenerative capacity, the ability to replenish, to rebuild, and to replace. The tissue is declining as aging continues. It's just a natural function of aging. So the human peptide GHK-Cu here says it was isolated in 1973 by Dr. Lauren Picard. It says Picard as an activity in human albumin that caused old human liver tissue to synthesize proteins like younger tissue. Very important, because as you know, I'm going to hit a pause button here. Your liver takes care of the detoxing and the purification of your body. About 85% of that work is done by your liver. About 15% of it is done by your kidneys. And as you may or may not know, your skin is considered, they also call it your third kidney, because we obviously process detoxification and get rid of waste product also through our skin, through perspiration. So I like to point out we get rid of toxins and things that don't serve the body through perspiration, urination, and defecation. So sweat, pee, and poop it out. Make sense? Okay. So it's talking about here that later studies, subsequent studies, established this activity as a tripeptide with an amino acid sequence, and it talks about the glycol L, histidyl L lysine, with a strong affinity for copper that readily form the complex GHK-Cu. So it was proposed that GHK-Cu functions as a complex with copper 2+. So Picard et al., Dr. Picard and company, have established that GHK-Cu accelerates wound healing and contraction, and it improves the take of transplanted skin and also possesses anti-inflammatory actions. Anti-inflammation, anti-inflammatories are very important for the body, for it to repair and to restore itself. So it goes on to talk about here that the later studies, subsequent studies directed by Borel and Marquardt et al., demonstrated that GHK-Cu at a very low non-toxic concentration, it talks here about 1 to 10 nanomolar, stimulated both synthesis and the breakdown of collagen and glycosaminoglycans, and GHK modulated an activity of both metalloproteinases and their inhibitors, TIMP1 and TIMP2, acting as a main regulator of wound healing and skin remodeling processes. So all this is basically telling you that this was acting as the main regulatory organism or factor that is increasing wound healing and the skin remodeling processes. And it also talks about how GHK-Cu here, it stimulated collagen. That's like the largest, most important and significant protein in the body to repair it. So it stimulated collagen, dermatan sulfate, chondroitin sulfate, and small proteoglycan and decorin. Talks about in 2001, McCormack et al. Established that GHKCU restored the replicative, in other words, the ability to reproduce and basically like a photocopy, replicative vitality to fibroblasts from patients after anti-cancer radiation therapy that damages cellular DNA. So GHK was also found to attract immune and endothelial cells to the site of injury. So it's telling you here very clearly that GHK was found to attract, it's attracting like a magnet, your immune capacity within the body and the interior endothelial, the skin cells, the tissue cells inside whatever organ, whatever muscle, whatever bone, whatever it is that you have inside of your body that's injured, that's damaged, it's attracted to that site through this GHKCU copper peptide. So wherever you have that injury. Goes on to say that wound healing activity of GHKCU was confirmed in animal experiments. This GHKCU accelerated, it speeded up, it quantum rapidly began this effect of repairing and restoring this wound healing and increased blood vessel formation. So when you have increased blood vessel formation, you have more vitality, you have more repair that's taking place because instead of having less blood vessels, you have new blood vessels that are being created to feed. That's like the source of nutrients to repair whatever that is that's in damaged state of being. And now it's going to flourish because it's being fed all the nutrients that it needs to repair and to restore itself. And it also talks about it also increased the level of antioxidant enzymes in rabbits. So this molecule also induced systemic wound healing in rats, mice, and pigs. So what does that mean when you hear about something working systemically, when you have systemic wound healing? So let's just, it talks about rats, mice, and pigs. So let's take the rat, for example. Let's say this rat had heart issues. It had some sort of disease. It had some sort of trauma. It had some sort of injury. It had some sort of cellular damage to its heart, which if it has any kind of damage in the heart, that means it's going to have cardiovascular issues. So maybe the cardiovascular system, maybe the rat has high blood pressure, maybe it has low blood pressure, maybe it has, let's say it has very low blood pressure. If it has very low blood pressure, that means that the blood is circulating very slow in the body because it's moving throughout that rat's body very slowly because the cardiovascular system is impaired due to the damage that's in that pig's heart. Obviously, the brain function of that rat is going to be lowered and diminished as well, because with lower cardiovascular function, you have less blood flow to the brain. Less blood flow to the brain means less oxygen to the brain, less nutrients to the brain. So as you have less of that, you have what we call neurocognitive decline. That means that you have a decline in the ability of the brain to remember, to learn, to clearly think, to recall, because everything is moving so much slower. When you have a systemic wound healing that is taking place because this GHKCU is now signaling that inside of the body, as the cardiovascular system improves, the brain processing speed, the memory, the focus, the clarity, all of that is going to improve too. Does that make sense? So it says here, it improved the healing of a diabetic and ischemic wounds in rats, decreasing the level of TNF alpha and stimulating collagen synthesis. That's pretty impressive. So a diabetic, it had a wound in this particular rat, and the stimulating collagen synthesis improved the ability of that rat to experience repair and restoration. So it said it also facilitated healing of the pad wounds in dogs. So if you look at your dog, you'll see that your dog has like 3 pads. And you'll notice that those pads, in this particular case, there was a dog that was obviously administered GHKCU, and the wound healing of those pads was done more rapidly because of this. It says here, such well-documented skin regeneration activity prompted, that means it include, or it ignited widespread use of GHK in anti-aging cosmetic products. So it goes on to talk about recently, GHKCU has been gaining publicity and prospective therapeutic agent for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which we talked about earlier, COPD, skin inflammation, metastatic colon cancer. As you can start to kind of put 2 + 2 together, you can see how GHKCU is going to affect all the different aspects of the body. Anywhere where you have skin, outside as well as inside your body, all the tissues, etc., are all going to benefit from this. So it says here that it has been established that it is capable, and this is very exciting to read about in this paper. I don't know why this isn't turning off. It's kind of acting a little funky here, but it's basically saying that it has been established that it is capable of up as well as down regulating at least 4,000 genes in the human genome. Essentially, it's resetting your DNA back to a healthier state. So here we have where it basically gives public notice that it has been established. It's confirmed basically that GHKCU will either upregulate or downregulate, depending on what your genetic expression is that you were originally conceived with. It'll regulate up or down up to 4,000, at least 4,000, minimum of 4,000 genes in your human genomes. So basically resetting your DNA back to a healthier state. So if you were not born with, if you were not, let's say, maybe when you were a baby, a young child, young adult, if you didn't have whatever symptoms, whatever laundry list, grocery list, if you will, of conditions and symptoms, and maybe even diagnoses that you've received over the course of years, if you didn't have those things as a young individual or as a baby, then that means that your body can be reset to a younger, healthier state by simply signaling this. And yes, before this is over, I will tell you how you can actually start to signal GHKCU. You don't have to take it in oral form. You don't have to take it anything outside of you, exogenous, but you can start to do something to your body that will signal the GHKCU inside your body to upregulate or downregulate based on the original blueprint that you were conceived with to restore your body to a younger, healthier state. And it talks about how this sheds new light on the skin remodeling activity of GHKCU copper peptide. The present review revisits GHKCU's role in skin regeneration and the light of recent discoveries. So it's talking here about how it restores the TGF beta pathway in COPD, cardiopulmonary here disease that we talked about a little earlier, okay? Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So in this section, it talks about how there was a collaborative study that was conducted by a group of scientists at Boston University and the University of Groningen University of British Columbia. And the University of Pennsylvania established that GHK peptide reverses the gene expression signature of COPD. So this particular paper is honing in on not just tissue repair, but also on the expression of a particular condition. Most of what I talk about doesn't deal with a specific condition. We talk about systems of the body. As you are probably very well aware, I oftentimes talk about, one of my favorite topics to talk about is my holy grail of restoring the body to a younger, healthier state, which is stem cell activation patches that are organic nanotechnology that uses photobiomodulation, wearable light therapy, to turn on your stem cells. And they're activated through GHKCU that's inside your body. It's actually signaled to turn on your stem cells. So we'll talk about that a little bit towards at the end of this. So it talks here about, this is COPD, which is it's presenting as COPD, and it was manifested by emphysema, inflammation, lung tissue destruction, and a significant reduction of lung capacity. Okay, so okay, so next we have, okay, I'll kind of, I want to share with you, I want to be completely transparent. It says here that COPD is manifested by emphysema. As you may or may not know, emphysema is it's a diagnosis of a particular condition. So I would argue that COPD, or the diagnosis of CPD, it says here it was manifested by emphysema. I would argue emphysema is another, it's another diagnosis. So I don't think that the emphysema caused the COPD. Emphysema is basically the evidence of inflammation and damaged tissue within the lung. And those are the things that basically manifested the COPD, or what that particular healthcare practitioner labeled as COPD. And COPD, a lot of different medical conditions are really descriptions of what it is that's going on inside the body, as in this chronic. If you look at here at chronic, that's like repetitive. Obstructive, that's something that's impeding your lungs to perform the way it should normally do. So again, these are descriptors: chronic, obstructive, chronic being repetitive, obstructive, something that's impeding. Lung dis-ease is the lack of ease in that particular organ, which in this case, we're talking about the lungs. Okay. So that's my a little bit, if you saw a little bit of my hesitation there, that's what that was all about. I don't want anybody to think, hey, what else is going on here? So this particular paper says here that the researchers identified 127 genes. If you don't know, I will let you know now that there are 23,688 genes in the human body. Okay. And the researchers of the 23,688 genes, they're talking about 127 genes whose expression was important. It was significantly associated with the emphysema severity that these people were experiencing. And it talks about among those genes where the expression was upregulated in COPD patients were genes involved in inflammation, while expression of genes involved in tissue remodeling and repair was markedly downregulated. So what is this saying? Let's talk about this in layman's terms. This is talking about, for people with COPD, there's 127 of the 23,688 genes, that those genes were significantly, that means that there was a large association with the degree of severity with them having COPD or emphysema. And among those genes, it says whose expression was upregulated in people with COPD, those genes were involved in inflammation, while expression, the manifestation or the presence of genes involved in tissue remodeling, were markedly down. So that means that there were very few expression of genes that were actually remodeling the body, which is just going to make that condition much, much worse. It's going to progress. It'll be a progressive worsening of that condition until you turn around the gene expression to upregulate anti-inflammation, etc. Does that make sense? Okay. As an aside here, just so that you know, anytime you have inflammation anywhere in the body, inflammation is there because there are damaged cells. There's damaged cells, there's damaged tissue, there's damage in the body. You don't have inflammation without there being damage. If there is no damage in the body, there's no inflammation. End of story, okay? It talks about among the genes displaying decreased activity were genes involved in TGF-beta pathway. Using the connectivity map, this is a specific software gene profiling tool developed by the Broad Institute. The researchers identified GHK as a compound which reversed changes in gene expression associated with emphysematous destruction. In particular, patients with COPD displayed a decreased activity of genes involved in TGF-beta pathway. GHK reversed the gene expression pattern so it became consistent with the activation of the TGF-beta pathway. That's a little too technical. You don't really have to follow that. It's just telling you, it's basically telling you on the 405 freeway, you're going to get off on Beach Boulevard, exit 5A. That's the equivalent to that, okay? So now it goes on to talk about in vitro studies confirmed that treating lung fibroblasts with GHK reversed, it unrung that bell basically. It reversed negative changes associated with decreased TGF-beta activity. So it was established, it has been established that lung fibroblasts derived from COPD patients had certain defects. which impaired their ability to contract and remodel collagen gel. So now I want you to think about that, because if you have the inability, it says here that it was impaired. Their ability was impaired to contract and to remodel collagen gel. If your body, which is the number one building block, it's the number one building protein inside your body, if that's being blocked or if it's being slowed down, in this case, it's talking about it being impaired. So there's something that's blocking it from its ability to come forth, then you're not going to have the cellular repair that your body needs in order for it to get well after not being well. Okay. So when such fibroblasts were treated with either GHK or TGF-beta, the contraction and remodeling of the collagen gel was restored and became comparable to fibroblasts derived from lungs of ex-smokers without COPD. So after so it's basically telling you that they're able to unring the bell and then restore the body back to its younger, healthier state. After the GHK treatment, the lung fibroblasts derived from COPD patients were able to remodel collagen gel into the fibrils. They also had an elevated expression of integrin beta 1. This findings indicate that GHK may be able to improve tissue generation by restoring activity of genes involved in the TGF-beta pathway. Very exciting. So it says here, it is known that skin regeneration requires the participation of multiple cytokines and growth factors. Rather than work separately, they basically engage in a crosstalk. So it's like both of them are talking to each other at the same time, kind of like being on both ends of the phone. You're making the phone call, somebody else is receiving it, and a conversation instead of a monologue where only one is talking, both of you are talking at the same time. So this is the crosstalk that's happening with both. So this involves an interaction of different cellular, isn't it funny? We just talked about cell phones. Am I making a phone call? You picking up the phone and answering, and now we have a conversation instead of a monologue where I'm just talking at you. And we talk about cellular pathways. So for example, cellular pathways regulated by TGF-beta and integrin seem to be connected. GHK's ability to restore the contraction and remodeling of collagen gel in COPD study demonstrate that the GHK is capable of activating both the TGF-beta and the integrin betas. It's basically the two betas that are required for this repair to take place. And during this tissue regeneration process. So even though the exact mechanism of GHK is yet to be elucidated, so even though they don't really know exactly the nitty-gritty details, all the little fine print of how this actually comes into being, it says here, it becomes apparent that the diverse and multiplying effects of GHK in skin regeneration can be better understood through its ability to reset the gene pattern back to a healthier state, leading to the activation or deactivation of various cellular pathways. So depending on whether your body needs to upregulate or downregulate to get rid of inflammation, to do the cellular repairing, rebuilding, and restoring of that tissue to a younger, healthier state, it will do whatever's necessary based on the original blueprint that you had from your stem cells, of course. So now it's going on to talk about cancer metastasis. So it's cancer metastasis of genes and skin remodeling. Again, I want you to think from now on when it talks about skin and skin restoration, rejuvenation, rebuilding, remodeling, it's not just the outside skin that we can see on each other, but it's also the interior skin walls of inside your body, of inside your organs, outside of your organs, inside your muscles, outside the covering of your muscles. It's all of that is skin tissue. Okay. So it talks here about Hong et al. Used a genome-wide profiling to identify genetic biomarkers for metastasis-prone colorectal cancer, as well as perturbagens and substances that modulate their expression. Okay, so it's talking about specific colorectal, basically cancer of the colon. The search out of 1,309 bioactive compounds yielded only 2 substances that were able to effectively downregulate the expression of metastatic genes, and GHK and the plant alkaloid securenine. GHK suppressed RNA, that's DNA, there's RNA and DNA. RNA is ribonucleic acid, DNA, ribonucleic acid. So now we're talking about RNA production in 70%. This is pretty significant. So GHK, so this GHK copper peptide, it suppressed RNA production of 70% of 54 human genes that overexpressed in patients with this aggressive metastatic form of colorectal cancer. Talks about how GHK produced as the result of a low non-toxic one, that's a micromolar is a measurement. It's a unit of measurement at a cellular level. Concentration and securenine at 18 micromolars. These are tiny, tiny little amounts. The authors point out that both GHK and securenine are well-known skin remodeling agents. Securenine activates macrophages, and is a component of traditional African and Chinese medicine for skin injuries. So this is kind of interesting. I love to always point out how, science is only about 300 years old. Chinese medicine, it's about 5,000 to 7,000 years old. We know that during the Ming Dynasty, the Yellow Emperor actually began to document all the different type of roots and herbs and tinctures that they knew at the time actually had a direct benefit on the human body for healing, for anti-aging, for all sorts of different effects. And also the African tradition also has some things that are similar. I happen to be very privy to a lot of Chinese medicine practices, Taoist principles and so forth. Traditional Chinese medicine, I have different, traditional Chinese medicine certifications because it has to do with holistic and integrative medical modalities. And so I've taken it upon myself to make it my business to go down those rabbit holes and learn about those things so that I can use them in my practice. So it talks here about the 54 genes whose expression was actually reversed by GHK included node molecules, YWHAB. And then this is basically listing the different names of the molecules. I'm not going to read them all because it's basically alphabet soup, and we don't have a way of describing or assigning a meaning to all of these. You don't have to remember these, but it's just letting you know which of these node molecules were actually affected through the application of GHK in these individuals. So it says here, all of which were involved in the regulation of multiple biological functions through a complex molecular network. The fact that GHK was able to suppress 70% of the genes involved in the development of an aggressive metastatic form of colon cancer indicates that GHK is capable of the regulation of various biochemical pathways on a gene level, and it seems to be resetting the gene activity back to health, which leads to the improvement of tissue repair. I kind of feel like we did a whole full circle here. Talks about some in vitro studies done by Metalka and all, found that when 3 lines of human cancer cells, and it gives you them right there, neuroblastoma cells, histolytic cells, breast cancer cells, they were incubated in a culture for it's giving you the measurement of 1 to 10 nanomolar GHK. The programmed cell death system, which that's what apoptosis is a cell death system, was reactivated, and cell growth of the cancers were inhibited. 70%, that's a huge number. It says here that Dr. Lauren Picard et al., using the Broad Institute data, found that GHK induces anti-cancer expression of numerous caspase, growth regulatory, and DNA repair genes. So the combination of ascorbic acid, vitamin C, and GHKCU strongly inhibited the growth of sarcoma inhibited the growth of sarcoma and 180 in mice. So let's hit a pause button here. I personally have someone in my practice. I have multiple, but I'm going to pick one in particular. I have a gentleman that August 23rd, He was ran to the hospital. He was having severe stomach pain. He was urinating and defecating blood. He was hemorrhaging out of both ends, in terrible pain, at a complete conundrum, complete loss, baffled and very distraught and very confused and afraid. Ran to the ER to find out what's going wrong and for help, as anybody would do in his type of position. And his daughter had just ordered and had just gotten started and had just received in the mail her stem cell activation patches, which we had just gotten her started on. And she had received them the day before, had not applied them yet to her body yet. And lo and behold, within 24 hours of her having those in her possession, this happens to her father. So she called me in a panic. She's like, help, help, help. What do we do? And I'm like, my goodness, we gotta patch your dad with those patches that you have in hand now. It's like life-saving technology in more ways than we could have ever imagined. So at 7 p.m. California time, because this is here in Irvine, California, that this took place, she met with him at the emergency room. We did a Zoom call, and then we began to apply the patches. The doctor's in the ER. I knew that he was going to be admitted. I used to work in the ER like almost 30 years ago. So I knew that we had to get his pain level down. I knew that we needed to get the bleeding to stop, because you can't be hemorrhaging like that. That's your blood pressure will drop and you'll bottom out. You could die from that. So we patched him. He was admitted to the hospital. Within an hour of his being patched, we got the pain level down and we got his bleeding to stop. And he was admitted to the hospital. And then 2 days later, he was diagnosed with a tumor in his stomach, and he has been diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma cancer in the bones as well as the stomach. So fast forward 5 weeks later, and he was wearing the patches. He was doing the stem cell activation patches, the Fantastic 5, every single day starting August 23rd. Fast forward to the 14th of, it's Monday, I think it was Monday the 14th. It was definitely the middle of October. That Monday afternoon, I get a call from his daughter, and her saying, oh my gosh, it's a miracle. We just had the results of his PET scan that he had done last week, and the PET scan is now showing that the tumor in his stomach gone. The PET scan, which I have a copy of the PET scan actually shows that he's still, even though he has no tumor in his stomach, that is completely clear. The top, his body is clear of that metastatic of the stage 4 lymphoma cancer. It still showed trace amounts in the bones, in the bone marrow. So it said that there was still some stage 4 lymphoma cancer in the bones. So fast forward to a week before Christmas, he had just had another PET scan done, and that PET scan shows he is clear head to toe. There's no stage 4 lymphoma cancer. So we always recommend that you be on the stem cell activation patches for up to 12 months. So you give your body the benefit of replacing and restoring your entire body, not just some of the cells in your body that are giving you the cause, whatever it is that you're presenting with symptoms, whatever it is that you've been diagnosed with, but without being on stem cell activation patches, the typical body takes 7 years to replace all 56 trillion cells that you have in the human body. So any cells that you have in your body right now are as young as a few milliseconds old. The oldest cell throughout your entire body is no more than 7 years old. 8 years ago, completely different body. While on the stem cell activation patches, we can replace the majority of those cells so that 12 months after you've been wearing the stem cell activation patches for 12 months, guess what? We know from taking blood tests and looking at the biomarkers, we will see that your body has been reset and restored to a younger, healthier state of anywhere from 16 to as high as 20 years. That's exactly right. 16 to 20 years. At the 6-month mark, your body is basically 8 to 10 years younger. And at the 12-month mark, your body is 16 to 20 years younger. Does that make sense? Absolutely incredible. We know from blood tests and from scientific studies that we've actually done on people wearing our stem cell activation patches, for every 6 weeks, and this has a compounding effect, for every 6 weeks that you remain on the stem cell activation patches, your cardiovascular system reverses its age by 8 weeks. So you start doing the math. It's like every 6 weeks, it's 8 years young. 8 weeks younger. So you wear them for 6 weeks, and now it's not, your cardiovascular system isn't just 6 weeks younger. It's actually 8 weeks younger or more. And it continues to exponentialize as you continue to stay on the patches for that full year. After the first year is done, 12 months, you can stop. Nothing bad's going to happen, because you're going to be a 16 to 20-year-old younger version of yourself, but an optimized version. Because it's possible that 16 to 20 years ago, maybe you had certain things that were going on with you, but now you're going to be 16 to 20 years younger without any of those inflammatory type of conditions that plagued you at the time. That makes sense? Okay, so let's talk about here in the next part of this paper, it talks about the recovery of skin stem cells. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about any of this information that I'm reviewing at this time, just put your comments below, put your questions. I always make sure to get back to everybody and answer their questions. If any of you might be interested in getting started on the stem cell activation patches, you don't want to finish listening to this whole information about this particular research paper, talking about the role of GHK, as well as how it affects your stem cells and what the findings are. Maybe you just want to go ahead and pull the trigger, order the Fantastic Five now. You can go to lifewave.com/Dame Lillian Walker, and you can hit join. And when you hit join, you pick a gold pack. You get to pick the Fantastic Five, which I talk about routinely all the time in my YouTube channel, because it's the foundation to build your body as your home. And you're building the foundation with the activation of those 5 stem cell activation patches that takes care of all the systems of your body. If you have anything in addition to that that needs addressing, like extreme pain, or you have sleep disorders, or if you have extreme depression, things to that nature, or if you have, maybe you need to have maybe you have autonomic nervous system or neurological type of presentations in your body, symptoms, diagnoses, then you might need some of those other patches, at which point you could always, check in with me. But you can go directly now to the site. You can pick, let's say, a gold pack, which would cover you for the Fantastic Five. And, but if you want me to walk you through that process, our practice has 713 doctors and holistic care practitioners. So as a direct result of that, we oftentimes get free product. Like right now, I just had somebody earlier today. We started them on the Fantastic Five on a gold pack. And in addition to getting the Fantastic Five stem cell activation patches, she also got the Nirvana Mood Enhancer system, because she does have severe pain throughout the body. And so she needed that. And as well as SP6, which is to regulate your autonomic nervous system. Okay, back to recovery of skin stem cells. And skin regeneration depends on the viability and proliferative potential of stem cells. So skin regeneration, the ability of the body to regenerate and to replenish, to replace the existing cells of the skin, it depends on how alive the multiplying effect of potential stem cells that you have. And that proliferative potential, that's all it's saying. The ability of that stem cell, whatever number of stem cells that you have, to proliferate, to multiply, to create more stems and more cells of whatever type that you might need in real time. This skin proliferation, multiplication, if you want to replace the word proliferation, it's the multiplying and the replacement of, in the basal layers of the keratinocytes, which are attached to the basal membrane. So this is just basically talking about the structure of your cells. We don't need to get into all of that biology. Let's just keep it. It's going to go to the base level of the structure of the cell as it builds it from the ground up, is basically what it's talking about here. So when a cell leaves the basal layer, which is like your foundation, it undergoes terminal differentiation. Stem cells have unlimited self-renewal capacity. That's the beauty of stem cells. A stem cell, it talks about it right here. Stem cells have unlimited self-renewal capacity. So the stem cells, your stem cells that you were conceived with, have the ability, they're pluripotent, which means that they have the ability to turn as it realizes that you need a heart cell, or you need a brain cell, or you need a liver cell. In real time, your stem cells will go, oh, she needs a liver cell. Boom. I'm going to pop out a liver cell and I'm going to send it to her liver. Or she needs a brain cell. Boom. I'm going to create a brain cell, or maybe a brain neuron cell, and I'm going to send it up to her brain. And this is unlimited in its capacity to self-create those new cells. Very exciting. And that's why we call stem cells the holy grail of healing, the holy grail of restoration, the holy grail of rejuvenation, the holy grail of optimization of your body. However, their proliferative potential declines with age. We talked about this earlier, that by the time you're 60, 90 to 100% of your stem cells have gone to sleep. They're dormant. They've gone nighty-night. And they don't want to turn on unless you do something to turn them on. Like, I don't have to tell you to get started on stem cell activation patches, but if you choose to do so, you're going to turn those ones that the light switch has already gone off on them so that they're off. You're going to turn them back on. And now you're going to have this repair and restore cycle going on every day for the next 12 months for your benefit. So it says here, GHKCU in concentrations of 0.1 to 10 micromolar increased expression. Increase the expression of epidermal stem cell markers such as integrins and P63 and basal keratinocytes and dermal skin equivalents. Interesting, because our stem cell activation patches, we actually measure this P63 protein, which according to the authors indicate increased stemness and proliferative potential of basal keratinocytes. So it says, therefore, the restoration of gene pattern characteristics of healthy stem cells, which leads to the activation of integrins and P63 cellular pathways, may be another target for GHK's gene modulatory activity relevant to skin regeneration. A recent study has established that pretreatment of human mesenchymal stem cell / stromal cells with GHK presented in a biodegradable carrier, it distinguishes here alginate gel, produced a dose-dependent increase in the secretion of proangiogenic factors such as vascular endothelial factor and basic fibroblast growth factor. When pre-treated with antibodies to integrins alpha 1 and beta 2, the MSC failed to produce an increase in VEGF, VEGF, which indicated that the effects of GHK on secretion of trophic factors by MSC involved the integrin cellular pathway. So, going on to skin repair here, number 5, it talks about wound healing and skin repair involves inflammation. Skin repair, whenever your cells, again, your stem cells, when it sees that you have skin anywhere in the body that has inflammation, that is a signal to your stem cells that you have damage because you have inflammation. So that needs to be, they need to create a new cell and they need to replace it, repair it, and then it has to throw out that waste. And the waste is going to be secreted. You're either going to, through perspiration, urination, or defecation. You also have exhalation. Some of it also comes out through your breath. We're all aware, sometimes people have bad breath, sometimes to the degree that you have parasites, sometimes to the degree that you have food that is high in preservatives and other type of toxins, artificial colors. I mean, the list is pretty endless. Your body, its job is to get rid of anything that doesn't serve it. So you're going to, through exhalation, through perspiration, urination, and defecation, through your breath, sweat, pee, and poop it out. It's going to come out, okay? So wound healing and skin repair involves inflammation and cell proliferation, that's ability to multiply, and migration, getting to your dermal matrix remodeling. So the level, the layer of your skin that has to do with your skin remodeling. Okay. Excessive inflammation may delay healing and lead to scar formation. Now, this is the cool thing with our stem cell activation patches. Our stem cell activation patches are designed in such a way that because they work systemically, it will replace the tissue of scar tissue. I was just talking to somebody actually earlier today that they were talking about how their scar tissue, how it's significantly less since they started on the stem cell activation patches. One of the things that I'm wearing the stem cell activation patches is for a scar that I suffered when I was hit by an Orange County Transit Authority bus in 2017. I was 3 blocks shy, just 3 blocks shy of finishing a 16-mile bike ride when I was hit from behind. I suffered a traumatic brain injury, C5, C6. Some of you know my story, some of you don't. But this is my truth. I had a C5, C6 neck injury as well as a traumatic brain injury. Was hit from behind, an L5 injury, and a leg injury. And that leg injury, it took, even though I normally, prior to that accident, I would heal. If I would get a cut within a day or two, that cut was gone. I would, my body, because I've always eaten very healthy and organic, and my mom and dad have always been into health and nutrition. And my dad to this day still, works out, runs, bench presses, part of a gym and does so 5 days a week and so forth. And my mom still does calisthenics every day, every month. She's been doing that since she was 15 years old. And they're into eating healthy and juicing and all of that. So my body was in pretty good shape prior to my getting hit by the bus. And then everything got out of whack because when you suffer a traumatic brain injury, all lines get off. Your neurochemistry, your biophysiology, all your body's chemistry gets thrown off the loop because you go offline, right? And I had a terrible scar. It took me over a year for that wound to finally close from my leg. And then when it did close, then of course, when it was finally healed and not oozing and not still being actively open, think about that. For a year, I was, subject to infection and at risk of infection because it was open, for that whole year. Finally, it did close and finally it did heal. And then of course it did so with a scar and it left a purple, ugly scar. And unfortunately, that was still there. And then when I knew that the skin has the ability to repair. And, I know that, some people get keloids, which is, it's like a thicker scar tissue. Luckily, I don't have that type of skin. I have a lot of empathy for people who do have that type of skin. I don't have that type of skin, but I did have a scar. And my scar is significantly less. In fact, one of my business partners, Dr. Stacy, I just saw her in Sarasota, Florida. And I told her, look, it's almost gone, because she saw it in August. And so she could see the difference between August and now. And she's like, girl, it's like, she goes, I don't see any scar. It's basically gone. I go, I can still, you can compare my right and my left leg and you could see there's clearly, I think it's clear that there's a difference, but some people say it's like, it looks like if you hadn't pointed it out, I couldn't see that there was anything wrong there. So I know that in time, I go, to me, it doesn't matter how long it takes. It's been almost 6 months now, so it might take another 6 months. I go, who cares? Whether it takes another 6 months, whether it takes a year and a half, it might take 2 years. I don't really care. I'm going to continue to wear the patches until I find that everything is restored in my body. And at that point, I'll decide if I probably will continue on the stem cell activation patches, because why not be as young as you possibly can be and be in the most healthy, energized state of being? And that's my personal take. Not everybody has that goal, but many people do. So this is talking here about excessive inflammation may delay healing and lead to scar formation. So the stem cell activation patches will actually replace, rebuild, and restore that scar tissue. It's actually going to take the original tissue and replace it so that then it gets rid of the scar tissue. One of our patches is the glutathione patch, which is your master antioxidant. So that is going to detoxify your body as well as boost your immune system. So without that particular patch, you're only going to get a 30% increase in glutathione from our mother stem cell patch. Once you are on the Fantastic Five, your glutathione levels based on your own body's innate chemistry that you were conceived with will elevate to 300 to 600%, which is going to expedite everything, detox you, and restore your body to a younger, healthier state. So it's very exciting. So it talks about here the copper complexes of the peptides, and it gives you a list of the peptides. We don't need to get into that. And it says reduces TNF alpha induced secretion of this pro-inflammatory cytokine L6 in normal human dermal fibroblasts, while Saccharomyces, copper ferment, oligolides, A copper had no effect. It says the authors propose that GHK and GHKCU can be used as a topical agent in treatment of inflammatory skin conditions instead of corticosteroids. Conventional protocols out there is like, if you have inflammation, let's put corticosteroids. It could be hydrocortisone. There's so many different like topical steroids that can be used, or in injection form. However, this is telling you the authors propose that GHK and GHKCU can be used as a topical. Here it's talking about a dermal, it's a transdermal agent, which means that it's going to cross, it's transversing the skin barrier, and it's going to be put topically on top of your skin as a lotion, a cream, some sort of gel, some sort of agent. And it's saying that you could use GHKCU for that in lieu of, instead of a corticosteroid. Okay. But the stem cell activation patches, you don't have to put that topical agent on. You just signal your body to create the GHKCU is activated in your bloodstream, and now you don't have need for a topical agent to reduce your inflammatory markers inside your body. So now it's going to talk in section 6 about GHK and DNA repair. Let's see where we are. Time-wise, we may not have, it's been almost coming up on the hour. So rather, I'm going to just finish here at this level 5. What I'll do is I will do another video where we continue to go through the balance of this paper. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom so that you see how many parts we have to this paper. It talks about the biochemistry. For those of you who took organic chemistry, you see the organic formula of GHK. So we didn't get to the exact 50% mark. We did 5 of the 12 sections. Tomorrow or tonight, we will conclude the balance of this. We might have to do a third one. We'll see how it goes, how many commentaries we have. So I want to thank you, my friends and gems, for tuning in, tapping in, turning on here to Love and Money Secrets TV. I hope you've enjoyed this content. If you have any specific questions, comments, or concerns, if you would like assistance, maybe a one-on-one for me to go over with you, the stem cell activation patches and how they might benefit you, and maybe go through an assessment. There's no extra cost for that. My private sessions, there are a cost for the private sessions, but if you're just inquiring about the stem cell activation patches, then we do a complimentary one-on-one where we jump on a Zoom call that's very much like this, and we'll go through whatever your list of your conditions and your symptoms are to tailor the stem cell activation patches to you, and we'll figure out the best way of getting you started and kind of move from there. We can answer any and all of your questions. If you're interested in having blood work done, we can get blood work done for you. We can send you a link. You can get that done. If you want to go to your primary care physician and get that done, that's perfectly okay too. If you would like our blood specialist, once you get started on the stem cell activation patches, if you would like for our blood specialist to review that with you, there's no additional charge for that. Our blood specialist will review that with you. There's nothing else to sell you. It's not about selling you anything. It's about educating and informing and empowering you so that you can make the best choice, the best informed, educated choice for you, for your health, and for your family. Okay? I want to give you information at the rate and speed that you can consume it. And once you feel ready, then we can get you started. Most important thing is that you are in the know. You are in the knowing of what it is that you were doing for your body. All right. Take care, my friends and gems. As always, ciao for now. Hey, it just so happens I've got our scientist, David Schmidt, happens to be on here right now. He is the inventor of the patches. He's the one who worked with the Department of Defense a little over 20 years ago. He was hired specifically to create stem cell activation patches for the Navy Black Ops SEALs. And the rest is history. And so here we are, my friends and gems. It's now available to people like you, with families like yours. We have Olympic athletes, we have professional athletes, we have college students, we have, and then people who are everything from the optimized aspect of health to people who need to repair something in their body that is not right. All right. Take care. Ciao for now. Bye.